Hello, welcome to the next DistAns series, Distributed Answers 5.0 by my count. Today I'm just going to be taking some time to answer questions and potentially watch a video of your guys' choice. People have been using the hashtag DistAns to forward videos to me that they think that I should review, maybe not worth an entire video or an edited video response to make, but nonetheless I should look at. So usually how I do this is I let people trickle in. I make sure that the sound is working properly. Of course, if you guys are in the chat right now, I'd appreciate you letting me know how the sound is. Okay, my chair is squeaking. Yeah, I know. I can't stop it. Unfortunately, I'm in a different situation than my usual one, so maybe I can turn down the sensitivity a little bit to get this to be a little bit less grating on people's ears. Okay, well, hopefully we will get started. I'll just be reading from the chat for a few minutes. It's not 5 yet. I'm starting early. Again, this is pretty informal, but I know I've got a new setup here. I have the whole bar, the whole Irish pub thing going. So hopefully that will be something that we can keep on going. I'll have a new theme for each one of the DistAns series. I'll just need to start up with the actual list here. I'm not going to go through this all together, but just looking at what we have, a bunch from an actual joke were forwarded to me. One from Pill Eater. I talked to the guy a few days ago. I'm not so sure that's necessarily worth it. One by Styx Hexenhammer, ContraPoints, Ruminations by Argent Templar on the recent Catholic crisis, the Sam Harris versus Jordan Peterson discussion in London. I can tell you guys right now, I just don't have enough time this time to do that. Maybe I'll have another DistAns one. I can do a 2-in-1 month type deal to take care of that. Again, I only have an hour and a half here, and I'm not going to be able to do multiple hour-and-a-half videos. It's just impossible. Why the Left Will Win, which I think is a pretty interesting one. I say a lot of these things I vaguely remember when people forward them to me. I watched like 5 minutes of them, and then I put them in my list. But generally, I don't really remember exactly what they said. So if people have any strong preferences, just communicate it to me in the chat. Okay. Reading the chat now. Okay. Have you considered engaging and talking to non-Western reactionaries, especially Muslims? Actually, that's a good question. I absolutely want to do dialogue with other reactionary thinkers from the Confucian or Muslim tradition. I think that's just going to be necessary. And by the way, yes, I do have a beverage. I'm on a diet, but I figured that one beer when I'm doing these live streams won't be a problem. And I like the idea that I'm sitting down on a Friday afternoon with a beer and ruminating on a lot of problems that have been going on, a lot of issues that are in the YouTube community. Of course, I would say there has been something that people have continuously asked me about, just aside from what the chat's asking currently, and that has been the whole Vegano Pope Francis thing. That is just, it's a mess. I guess if we decide to do the Argent Templar video, I'll probably end up talking more about it. I think our options are certainly, well, they seem at this point to be quite limited. But I think that this is an opportunity. I think every challenge like this is an opportunity. To a large degree, I think people who are Orthodox have leaned a bit on the church hierarchy. And by a bit, I mean way too much. And I think in a lot of ways, this forces them out of complacency. I think if there's one word to characterize Catholicism from 1950 onwards in this country, it's been complacency, and we've lost so much because of that complacency. So it might be worth discussing. I'd have to have some more direct questions, but I'm already anticipating that we're going to get a lot more questions. Would you talk to Merchant Struggle? Well, I talk to Merchant Struggle pretty regularly, so that's just. Talking to Merchant Struggle is like, every other week. It's not, I mean, sure, if he wants to talk to me about something, I'd be up for it. All right. So, yeah, by the way, guys, if you have a question, usually if you out-reply me, or, again, better yet, super chat me, I'll be able to see it better. Oftentimes it gets kind of lost in the shuffle. I imagine that the chat's going to get... I mean, I started this early intentionally. This chat is going to get a little bit... Hopefully more people will come in as the stream gets a little bit more mature. Or I actually... we're at 5 o'clock now, so I guess we can begin formally. At any rate, yeah, so... I'll ask about the videos at this stage. I know you guys can see my screen here. So again, just to list off for the people who are just starting in, we have, well, these are the things that people have put under the hashtag DistAns or sent to me. We have How I Became Amoral by Blithering Genius. I think that's the horrendous Dutch guy, the horrendous Dutch guy that I had that absolute train wreck of a debate with 2 weeks ago about. We have Why the Left Will Win by PhilosophyTube. That, I think, would be pretty interesting. A ContraPoints one, a Styx Hexenhammer one, and then 2 by An Actual Joke. I also have one by Benedict the 17th, but considering that I already did a response video to him, I think it'll be more or less redundant. But if people want to just write in the chat what they prefer, that would be great. I think that would really help us move along. Hopefully, after 50 minutes of answering basic questions, we'll get on to doing one video or the other. Okay, so at what point... And I think you can kind of see them in the little window there. Alright, so at what point does appealing to liberalism go from the only option for promoting right-wing ideas to becoming the neoconservative failure repeated? Well, I think it goes... Appealing to liberalism is a political reality, not a moral principle. And that's where I really draw the line. And I think the confusion is... The problem does not stem from liking liberalism. The problem does not stem from using liberalism. Certainly everyone who appeals to free speech, like I do, I'm not going to lie, I do that too. Every time we do that, every time we complain about Alex Jones getting censored, we are appealing to a concept of liberalism. And I think that's right to do that. It's the operative political principle in our society. It's foundational to this country, and it's certainly something that we should be claiming. But at the same time, I don't think that the problem really comes to when liberalism starts getting hoisted up as a moral principle. Like, it would be wrong to take extra liberal means to confront this problem. Classic example, Robert Spencer, not Richard Spencer. Robert Spencer getting kicked off of Patreon because of lobbying from MasterCard. We're not going to build our own credit company. We're not going to build our own credit card companies, people. There's no way to build our own type deal around this. At some point, it's going to have to come down to actual political pressure. So I think as long as that distinction is made, the moral principle from the political reality, or the moral principle from a heritage that we might like or feel sentimental value to, or feel like we should have the right to claim for ourselves, as long as we make that core distinction, I think we'll be perfectly fine. I don't understand, are we monkey the question? So I'll skip that one. What is the current state of Catholicism in America? Divided and almost in schism, I would say. I don't know. What does anyone else think about that? But I don't know. The current state of Catholicism is that it's divided. At this point, the division is very, very stark between people who largely support Pope Francis and think that we need to muddle on as it is, and people who think that we need to have a radical reform being brought in right now. So I'd say, strangely enough, as much as we talked about liberal and illiberalism from the previous question, I would say magazines like First Things magazines, they're more on the reform side. Of course, you think like, okay, Church Militant, Father Rippinger, those guys all want to have massive reform. We've known that forever. They're highly skeptical of modernism in all its facets, but even people from the orthodox, conservative, and neoconservative schools, like Rusty Reno and pretty much anyone else who writes for First Things magazine, they're hopping mad. They're furious, and I'm furious too. So I think really the battle lines are drawn pretty well at this stage. We've got the people that you'd want to have calling for reform, and with any luck, we'll be able to get it. So, we'll see where that eventually ends up. Okay, Again, people, if you can write in the chat what videos you want to do. What was life like before you found your faith? I don't know. That's sort of a weird question. A lot of conversion questions I get, again, they kind of like, they're oftentimes invitations to these on-the-nose narratives that I associate with evangelical Christianity, but probably it's not fair to associate these narratives with evangelical Christianity, where your whole life represents this triangle, where you lost your faith, and then your life just went down, and then you had a born-again experience, and your life just been going up ever since, and you've never had any problems, and that's it, right? And my path to faith does not take that pattern. It's just not, it's not that simple. And I highly suspect that anyone's conversion story is that simple. I'm seeing ContraPoints. Oh, yeah, I'm not doing Mr. Medicare stream about Sargon. Okay, the Sargon thing. I don't know about this. I mean, Mr. Medicare is a funny guy. I don't see the conflict between Sargon and Medicare as at all necessary. It's hilarious to watch. It's kind of entertaining, dramatic YouTube to watch two giants just go at it. But ultimately, I'm not so sure what's gained from it. Presumably, everyone here who participates in political YouTube wants to have the ideas in this sphere actually be taken seriously by people on the outside, right? And the only way we're going to do that is by interacting with real politicians. Now, does that mean that Sargon wasn't being egomaniacal when he made those comments on Discord? They sounded really cringy. But that doesn't mean that what he's trying to do is not important. At some point, lobbying actual politicians is going to be necessary. And that's the only way that what we do here on YouTube is going to have any relevance whatsoever. Jim's a funny guy, don't get me wrong. Have you ever spoken to Trudel Tom? I don't think I have. I probably should. We're very closely aligned on a lot of perspectives, religion notwithstanding. Can we expect much government in church without daily involvement from members? From government in church without daily involvement of members? Well, you're certainly not going to be able to expect much from your church without involvement. I will point out that the government, however, does not require your involvement. It will take the money it needs to function. The government may be incompetent in many directions, but collecting the funds it needs to continue operating is not one of those dimensions. So, be careful. There's an end to government incompetence, and that comes when that line comes when when it concerns taking the money it needs to operate, aka taxing you or jailing you if you don't pay your taxes. I'm seeing a lot of ContraPoints. Here. The only one that I was considering doing, I agree that would be a good one, and I think it's the most recent one, right? The aesthetic. The only one I thought might be interesting would be Why the Left Will Win. That was another good one. Of course, I'll probably do more of these DistAns series. We can return to them if need be. That might make things a lot easier. I'll let the chat go for a little longer. I think we have 4 more minutes before I really want to get started. Oh yeah, the Jordan Peterson one. I'm sorry. Claybaum said, "Why don't you do the ContraPoints for Jordan Peterson?" Oh, I got a super chat here. Super chat for £5. Tales of Ruin. Thank you very much. What do you think of Mulbug's patchwork as a reactionary praxis? I like patchwork. I guess maybe it's been a while since I've read the Patchwork Manifesto or whatever Mulbug was really the little pamphlet or blog post. He always writes these insanely long blog posts that are so long they might as well be novels or treatises or whatever. But I felt that there were some important questions that were still in my mind after I read Patchwork. The main one being just, you're going to have some kind of overarching control for this, correct? I mean, you'd have to. Otherwise, there'd be different little patches taking over the resources of other patches that were less confident or competent or militaristic. there has to be some governing structure at the top that mediates how these different patches interact with each other. Pardon me, for the chat, people who don't know what Mencius Moldbug's patchwork is, it's his conception that the ideal state of the world would be different little social experiments spread up all over the world who are totally autonomous, who could be democratic and not democratic, who could be run essentially like joint stock corporations, except with government being the subject of the joint stock corporation. So that was something, and it's not an original idea. Even Moldbug shows that's not an original idea. There are numerous sci-fi novels that have this theme to them. But at any rate, for people like me, it's very appealing because I want to see experimentation done. And I feel that the modern system isn't really providing an opportunity for that necessary experimentation. All right, we have another super chat from Spec 7RE82 for $4.99. Thank you very much. What do you think about statewide migration projects like Free State or Mormons in Utah? Well, I think I like the idea. I think the difficulty is that, as always, if this gains traction, you're going to have people in the federal government take notice and try to act against it. I think it's not a bad idea. If you could consolidate a few states that had power to implement policies locally, you'd go a long way. But at the same time, I think that there's a reason why our enemies are centralizing power ever upwards. Is because they know that that's where the ultimate power lies. I'm not so sure if you're going to have a state project work if the entirety of the national mainstream media is explicitly against it and treats it like it's an enemy. But, okay. Yeah, let's just scroll down here. Okay, do you think Singapore-style autocracy will be the best temporary solution in an increasingly diverse West? Perhaps. I mean, I don't like it, but that has crossed my mind, is that once the Democrats get back into power, they will be promoting certain autocratic functions of the state because they're going to be that's the only thing that's going to be able to keep the political body as one whole piece. That's the only way to do it. It doesn't seem like democracy is working right now, certainly. I mean, two diametrically opposed cultural factions fighting it out for ultimate control over the largest military in the world doesn't particularly seem stable to me. So, we'll make of that what you will. It does seem that's where the left is going. A Singapore-style autocracy. It's not going to get them socialism. I don't. There are going to be a lot of very disappointed Bernie bros who realize that that leftist autocracy is not going to get them socialism. It's going to get them corporatism built into the government. It's going to get them Mark Zuckerberg as the autarch of, the United States. It's going to get soulless technocratic administration and basically an end of all types of experimentation when it comes to living and operating inside various areas of this country. Exactly how many suits do you even own, Dave? I can't listen to a suitless YouTuber. I think that's a reference to the Sargon thing. Well, I have to own a few. I've been to plenty of conferences and I got married, so, whatever. Alright, so I'm thinking that people want to see ContraPoints more than anything else. This is going to be painful. I apologize to the audience in advance. So let's get this on the road. I assume that people want the ContraPoints with the newest one, right? I guess you can just type into the thing if you want the newest one or whatever. Actually, I'll just play the newest one, isn't it? How much longer is it? The newest one's 20 minutes and the old one's 28 minutes. I mean, it's more or less a wash, isn't it? Okay, well, I guess ContraPoints it is, first off. Okay, let's go. Let's just do it. Oh, ah! Oh God, what was that? Okay, let's start this from the beginning. I have to say, ContraPoints aesthetic is spot on. They're good at that. They're good at production design. I feel like I'm watching some kind of indie movie right now. Ugh. And only one of those things is considered to be wrong. And this is, this is always the thing about ContraPoints is this is sort of the gay camp that comes out of the 80s, the idea that, and you see the little this in Jewish culture and certainly in The Daily Show, where everything is a joke, but we're going to make a serious point. Actually, I don't even know so sure what point ContraPoints is going for, or is it Natalie now? I forget. Someone always tells me, "Oh, you shouldn't call them ContraPoints. That's the channel name or whatever." That's called postmodernism. God, this is tiresome. I'm already bored. Is this supposed to be ContraPoints' version of Roaming Millennial? Was this the... I remember there was a ContraPoints one a while ago where they were an internet YouTube host that was facilitating a debate between the honest Jewish intellectual and the ContraPoints over the top idea of the Nazi called Fritz. I think this is the same character, right? Yeah, you got that right. See, I know this character is going to be a TERF because it's a negative portrayal of feminism in a ContraPoints video, and the only negative feminists in the ContraPoints video are TERFs. Uh, oh shit, is there no sound on the audio? How can that be? Is everyone else getting sound? Okay, that's interesting. Let's... Okay, we'll have to fix this. I guess I pulled a Sargon on that one. We'll back it up a little bit.
Hi.
Are people hearing sound now?
Host of the Freedom Report. It's too early for this. Today, my guests are, well, who are you people?
I mean, I'm seeing sound go through the OBS. Shit. Okay, well, we'll try to fix this, and as we do, we can hopefully. That's funny. See, I'm seeing sound go through my OBS. So
I'm Dr. Abigail Cockbane.
Shoot. Yeah, no, I see, guys. I don't know what to do. I guess this thing is For some reason, not working. Well, I'll try to answer some... Well... Yeah, I'm going to read the chat. We'll have to do the video some other time. I can do a rehash of this later on with the thing. Oh, seriously? Wait, you're Okay, guys, I'm working on it here.
Or is it?
I'm going to leave it here, restart it, and then people can tell me if they're hearing this.
Use any two colors directly opposite on the color wheel.
Hi girls, I'm Tracy Mounts, guest host of ContraPoints, the internet show where we talk about sadness, fascism, sexual deviation, cults. This week, we'll be talking about colors.
Interesting.
Colors.
Okay.
What the fuck are they? In one beaker I have white.
So it's that versus this.
Brown. Pour them to...
Okay, great. This looks like it's working. Interesting. It's the exact opposite of what my OBS is telling me. Okay, we'll resume this. Okay, I'm going to assume that the sound is working now. Okay, so I get it now. There's just a delay. Okay. Yes, this is Distributist being peak boomer because now every single audio problem is going to be because of Mr. Medicare. Every audio problem is going to be boomerism. That's the key, guys. Okay, this should do it.
Hey, my guests are, Well, who are you people? I'm Dr. Abigail Cockbane, Associate Professor of Women's Studies and author of many, many books. Most recently, my doctoral thesis, Sacred Passage, The Divine Feminine in Flux and Flow. Oh, yes. And,
While we're waiting for this to proceed, I will read out one super chat that says, Morning Distributist, working in Hong Kong at the moment. Good to hear you. See you live again, and God bless. Well, thank you very much, Stephen Brocky, for Hong Kong, $100. Yeah. Anyway, that works. Yeah, no, I get it. I get it. Basically, it's just the delay. It's almost impossible to debug this stuff. I'm going to turn ContraPoints up enough because people said that, unfortunately, I have to listen to it in higher volume, but people say it's a little bit soft. So let's go.
You look familiar. Who are you?
So yeah, immediately you see that the TERF is the villain here. That's every single feminist who has a negative opinion as a TERF, and I think this is going to be how the modern feminists bury their dead bodies. Is they're going to label all of the extremist stuff that they can't really own, perhaps even large swaths of feminist theory before right now, as being TERF feminism. Just like they tried to do this with pop feminism previously, where all of the sins and the excesses of feminism were labeled pop feminism and then dismissed as not being real academic feminism. I remember this a while ago when you had I think you saw this a while ago when you had people like Shoe on Head and Armored Skeptic totally get snowed on by some of the Christy Winners crowd. And you had Shoe Head and Armored Skeptic literally say, no, academic feminism is good. It's just the pop feminism variety that's terrible. And I couldn't believe it. But at any rate, super chat from PS for $4.99. Incredibly, the Pope and the American Catholic clergy surpassed my negative expectations with their response. That's pretty accurate in my view. But anyway, I'm gonna keep on going with the ContraPoints video. Thank you for the super chat again. Do you know that there's actually like a personality cult on... There's actually a fan community around this particular ContraPoints cat character. The Tabby character. People actually, like... There are all sorts of Tumblr pages dedicated to this character. I can't believe it personally. I mean, it's the most unlikable of all the ContraPoints characters, yet everyone apparently has some kind of thing for this individual.
Okay, well, today my guests will be debating the topic. Well, here's a good one. Should it be illegal to use the wrong pronouns for a transgender?
Okay, should it be illegal to use the wrong pronouns for transgender people? So, this is so funny. Now, listen to this. Canadian Bill C-16 does not actually make it illegal to use wrong gender pronouns. But the thing is, it doesn't need to. Tort law and how institutions and HR departments are set up, that will be enough to physically enforce this. So that will be enough to get people fired. But the line from the left, again and again and again, all throughout Canadian Bill C-16's passing, all throughout the California Proposition passing, was, we're not making it illegal to use the wrong gender pronouns. That was their line, right? But now we're hearing that. Listen to the reaction, because I think the person arguing against illegality is going to be portrayed as the villain.
What do you think, Annabelle? Well, Jackie, liberation from the oppressive institution of gender begins with freedom of speech. For instance, this cat person over here is clearly a biological male in some sort of costume wig. Now, I of course support his right to dress however he wishes, but the fact remains that pronouns refer, as they always have referred, to chromosomal sex. But perhaps you disagree.
Am I sensing a TERF reactionary alliance in the works?
Sir. That's a human rights violation! I'll smash your fucking face. And here we have a clear illustration of the way that transgender ideology is merely a smokescreen
I have a sense that we're going to get a lecture on optics.
for male violence against women. And mind you, this is being taught in our schools. It's being forced on our children. It's becoming mandatory in every
have
workplace.
this cat
Dissenters
removed.
are being silenced, and something must be done about the encroaching trans agenda, taking away women's rights, invading...
Do you ever notice that all of the characters that are supposed to be the heroes in ContraPoints videos, of course ContraPoints plays all of the characters, but we're supposed to feel antipathy towards the free speech, I forget what this character is, the character in the white dress, the roaming millennial ripoff. We're supposed to feel antipathy towards the person trying to facilitate debate on the internet. We're supposed to feel antipathy towards the TERF professor who's sticking to her guns on what a woman is. We're supposed to feel antipathy towards the person who is the nice alt-right guy trying to take reactionary politics into the public square. But we're supposed to somehow sympathize with the hissing cat person. I guess I don't know exactly what to make of it. I mean, it's strange that this plays well in the mind of a progressive. I mean, it sort of does... I guess this is what was sort of fundamentally interesting about our particular time, is that it is a little bit like, what is it, Lewis's Law? I believe it's Lewis's Law, right? The parodies actually, depending on the audience, they can't be distinguished from real life interpretations of what they're depicting. The character of Tabby is... I know, and ContraPoints designed the character to be an egregious exaggeration of a left-wing personality, but they actually developed their own cult around them on Tumblr, and at the same time, every single one of ContraPoints' videos plays out like a parody of left-wing ideas, in my mind, and they're consumed by the left as authentic. So I don't know. We'll keep on going.
women's open spaces, depriving us of what feminism has worked so hard. I love a kitty queen, but Abigail clocks a cat. Gender's just like color. Some people see yellow, some people see blue. It's all a matter of opinion.
I'll see if they keep a consistent definition of that.
Or is it? It's not. Let's hear the real tea.
Ah, that's the name. It's Natalie now, I guess.
Tabby, sweetie, baby, princess. I feel ridiculous in this dress. Yeah, well, you look ridiculous because you wouldn't take the goddamn cat ears off. I think.
Yeah, it's the cat ears that make them look ridiculous. Okay, great. Let's start there.
I'm gonna take the dress off. Well, don't do that. I'm trying to help you out, girl. If you don't want to get misgendered, it helps to femme it up a little. I'm gonna take it off. Well, don't leave. You can change in front of me. I'm not a prude. I'm gonna go.
Oh, please don't. Please don't. Again, it's strange because with the left, it's pure negation in some sense. Like last time ContraPoints was talking about the word Hun, right? The word Hun being the idea that in transgender communities, people retreat to these little hug boxes online where no matter how ridiculous they look, they'll tell them that they're beautiful, right? You could be a man in a dress, and they'll still tell you you look great. Of course, why shouldn't they tell you that you look great, right? Because isn't beauty socially constructed? But no, it's not. And ContraPoints deals with this contradiction, and he has this debate about how ContraPoints themselves, they are putting a huge down payment on surgery to modify features of their body that they don't consider to be feminine enough, but still they consider femininity to be totally socially constructed. So at the end of the day, they're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to remove a psychological fixture or to address a psychological fixture with a physical transformation. It makes absolutely no sense. It can only be advanced in a vacuum of actual criticism. And so what's so funny about ContraPoints videos and why they continue to fascinate me is that you see these dialogues play out. And of course, there are always dialogues. There are always dialogues that go on. So, Socrates and Plato wrote dialogues with Socrates that were supposed to illustrate genuine philosophical disagreements through interplay of words and such. And they're supposed to show the best of both arguments and show how one is ultimately flawed. But in ContraPoints videos, the dialogue, it obliterates the entire presuppositions of the debate to begin with. In his video about incels and about physical insecurities, he says that the physical insecurities for the incels are unwarranted and psychological features and they need to get over them, but we should be sympathetic. But then he goes on to admit that they as an individual, they're paying money to address the physical features, not the psychological features. So at the end, his insight deconstructs his own point of view. And so again, it's the only thing I can sort of liken it to. If people remember, and I'm definitely outing myself as an older millennial when I'm saying this, does anyone remember the old Stephen Colbert from Comedy Central? Before he got to be incredibly pretentious, he actually had some funny bits during the Bush administration. And one of the funniest bits he did was where he did, I forget what it was called, but I think it was like Worthy Adversary. I think that was the name of the bit. And that was where he did exactly what ContraPoints did, right? Where he divided the screen and he debated with himself. And the obvious joke was that he was debating sort of like a conservative. The idea was that conservative ideas are fundamentally in contradiction to each other, right? That if you played them out in a Platonic dialogue, they would collapse into each other. You would obviously see the contradictions. Of course, Jon Stewart had done this before when he had Governor Bush debate President Bush. He took like the before and after lines they had on foreign policy in between the elections, and they put them up against each other. But the thing is that Colbert did this earnestly, where he played both sides of a conservative issue. So he would have like, the conservative commitment to to pro-life play against the conservative commitment to the death penalty, and who'd show that really conservatives are hypocrites for believing this, and the dialogue itself shows that neither points of view are consistent. But that was a joke. That was supposed to lampoon conservatives. ContraPoints does that for progressives. He's deconstructing everything about the progressive perspective inside this particular dialogue, where he plays both sides. And he totally undermines both sides of the issue. But let's continue going. Oh. Too many windows open.
Go behind the curtain. I like looking at naked people.
God. What was the context of that quote?
Why do you always hit on me? I thought you were into men. Well, I swing both ways. I like boy dick and girl dick. That's not how that works.
Oh, God damn. I forgot how painful ContraPoints videos were.
I hate that. The heart wants what it wants. Why did you invite me over here anyway? I saw what happened to you on the Freedom Report, and girl, you cannot be a trans woman on TV threatening people with a bat. You think it's morally wrong to stand up to your oppressors? No, morally wrong. What does that even mean? It was much worse than morally wrong. It was aesthetically wrong.
I guess so. And this is other thing I noticed about ContraPoints. The whole issue of punching a Nazi too. The whole morality of the issue has been, on the left at least, merged into a practical question about how effective it is at advancing left-wing politics. There is no more moral force against violence itself. That's completely gone from all ContraPoints conversations. Even when they're talking with more moderate people, when they're talking with Sargon, they admit that they don't really care if violence is done against right-wingers. All they care about is whether the violence done against right-wingers is going to return to them with bad political results. So I guess I can see why ContraPoints, even though they present themselves as someone who has dialogues with the right all the time, I can see why they don't come into dialogue with people like me anymore, because of the fact that, I mean, how could this actually sustain in a conversation with a right-winger? Like, you think that violence is only morally offensive to the point where it infringes upon groups that you like. That's what I have to believe here, right?
Was unfeminine. This is all you ever say to me. It's bad optics. It's bad aesthetics. Well, does reality matter at all to you?
Yeah, how about it's objectively morally wrong? I guess. And what's funny is that piece of the pie is nowhere in this conversation, right? Like, you've got the person on the right, who I think is supposed to be ContraPoints or Natalie or whoever the alter ego is for Natalie in this conversation. And then you've got the person on the left who's supposed to be their idea of what a radical leftist is. And apparently the radical left likes a lot, even though they're obviously a self-parody. And nowhere in this conversation is any understanding of the morality of hitting someone with a baseball bat is wrong. Again, like, it's in a it's a moral vacuum. It's also a vacuum that couldn't possibly interact with anyone outside of the left coalition. This is pure. Did I have a? Okay, it looks like I had a little bit of a burp in the stream, but everything is fine here. Anyway, I'm going to continue with the hope that people are actually seeing this still.
Because the reality is I am a woman, and maybe a bunch of ignorant people don't think I look like one, but the way things look isn't all that matters. Tabby, this is politics. Have you ever had a conversation with the average voter? Reality plays no role in politics.
I wonder what the definition of reality is in this, right? Is reality the substance? Is that what you can actually touch? That's not people's, like, idea. I had a conversation a while back with a radical trans lesbian. I don't even know what trans lesbian means. They're talking about how they were going to create an autonomous lesbian community. Like, we're going to have utopia, guys. It's all going to be women who have sex with each other. It's going to be a lesbian utopia because, you know what, guys? Women don't commit as many crimes. Women don't have as many social problems. This is going to be great. This is perfect. And then the question is, well, okay, so you're a trans lesbian. What does lesbian mean? Like, am I a lesbian if I have masculine features and I'm married to a woman? And they could not answer the question because at the end of the day, all lesbian meant was a word. It was purely restricted to the actual word itself. And nothing else. So I could ask, am I a lesbian? I could give them any real detail about my life, about my behavior, and they could not answer that question until they literally heard what I thought about the word lesbian.
Politics is aesthetics. Politics is aesthetics? That's literally what fascism is. Have you even read Benjamin? Fascism is the introduction of aesthetics into political life.
This is something that only someone from the early 20th century could possibly... look, fascism is just the extension of aesthetics into public life. Everyone in the chat here can... Hopefully people can see the picture here. What do you see in this very frame? I know ContraPoints has used this prop before. Well, fascism, the extension of aesthetics into public life, that sentence being uttered and closed, and in the very frame you see Chairman Mao wreathed in golden dragons, portrayed like a god. The left, the communists. I'm sure what we're going to get is that we're going to get a retroactive definition that says that Maoism was really fascism, right? Or maybe what Benjamin would say that. I guess he wasn't the right kind of communism, but again, I'm sure Benjamin was a communist, or someone who was a fellow traveler at least. And this is the embodiment of it. All regimes that are totalitarian, or that even have a cathedral, are going to bring aesthetics to support their political point of view into public life, into politics. That's has always been a matter of politics, and it always will be. So, I don't know. And, again, talking to ContraPoints here, ContraPoints is not Socrates. ContraPoints is not about the ideas. ContraPoints is about presentation.
Military parades, the pageantry, and communism responds by politicizing art. This is what I can't stand about communists. You want to turn art into propaganda.
I guess there's an admission of that, but again, this is what I'm talking about. A pure contradiction here. Pure, naked contradiction. Fascism is the thing that takes aesthetics and puts it into the political sphere. Communism does that. Is the contradiction addressed? It's just glossed over.
Well, art is already ideology. Look, instead of ruining art, why don't we fight the pageantry of fascism with pageantry of our own? And you know who's going to make that happen? Who? Well-funded trans women.
This is the most honest part of the ContraPoints video.
Patreon's in the description. Ew. Stop that. What? I'm just trying to monetize a connected engagement community by strategically leveraging my content creator promotional media brand analytics. Is that...
And this actually is postmodernism, because postmodernism, you can be as capitalist as you want, as long as you do it ironically. And then it kind of goes under the radar, right? Of course, this is also the thing too, right? I could have really picked any ContraPoints video to do out of a hat. This is just the most recent one, so I decided to review it. Every ContraPoints video has this. The core contradiction, never directly addressed, glossed over, and every time they gloss over the contradiction, they imply that there is some kind of saving distinction, like they're making a very, very subtle philosophical point, until you realize that they're just not obeying it whatsoever. So in the capitalism one, it was that my conspicuous consumption, my lavish lifestyle, my pearl necklaces, that's personal property, whereas what I'm disgusted with is private property. And the example of the private property was some ridiculous gold pizza that was totally ostentatious and not actually good for a purpose. I don't know, it sounds like anything that ContraPoints wears, does, or uses in any of their videos. There's no distinction to be made. There's a distinction to be made in any given shot. In any given sentence, it sounds like they're talking about a principle. But they never take that sentence and apply it generally to the rest of the career that ContraPoints works within. So in the end, you just get a naked contradiction piled upon naked contradiction.
Not so wrong? You're so bougie. I'm not the one quoting German philosophers from memory. Revolutionary philosophers. Whatever you need to tell yourself. Look, the point I'm trying to make is that the world we live in is not a philosophical world.
I'm just checking the time here.
Think about Instagram. It's all about transforming your life into an enviable spectacle. If you cry yourself to sleep every night, who cares? No one sees that. They only see the show you're putting on. Okay, but life is not a show. Politics is a show. Look around you, Tabby. Try to understand what's happening to the world. The President of the United States is a reality TV star. The 21st century is an aesthetic century. In history, there are ages of reason and there are ages of spectacle.
Interesting take on history, Contra. I don't think they're going to keep that one up as a principle.
And it's important to know which you're in. Our America, our internet, is not ancient Athens. It's Rome. And your problem is you think you're in the forum when you're really in the circus. I thought you were just criticizing me for being violent. Now you're against reason, too? I'm not against reason. Reason is a very powerful aesthetic. If you're a man. And what if you're a woman? Oh, don't be a woman. That's not a good idea.
Is this why ContraPoints doesn't actually talk with critics anymore? Did they consider open debate and dialogue to be part of a masculine aesthetic, and they're trying to discard that?
Ow. Do you remember that debate between Blair White and that YouTuber with the pink wig? What was her name? I don't know. She was relevant back in 2017. Anyway, this was before she transitioned.
Another thing, ContraPoints videos are always about themselves. And I guess this sort of goes par for the course due to the nature of filming every character as yourself in split screen. But there is this quality where most ContraPoints videos are just about selling themselves as a product, about promoting them either in the present form, the future form, or the past form. It's a constant reflection inside of reflection with no external reach out to anything else that's of substance.
And in that debate, Blair looked like she had 2 X chromosomes, and the other one looked like this awkward dude in an anime wig not looking at the camera. I vaguely remember. I think I wrote an angry blog post about it. Well, the pink wig lost that debate so bad. It was embarrassing to watch. Not really. I mean, she was right, and her arguments were better.
This is ContraPoints telling you that ContraPoints' arguments were better in that debate, or if you could call it that. I don't actually remember even seeing. I think it was something. I've been told that it was something like a cat fight or whatever. But
Abby, sweetie, honey, angel, darling, princess, baby. Arguments don't matter. How pretty you are matters.
this explains new ContraPoints.
Is this really where you're going with this? Tabby, if you want to be a public figure, sooner or later, you're gonna need to take the trans girl black pill. Oh boy. If you're a trans woman in the public eye, what matters is one thing and one thing only. And it's always been the thing that matters. Why? The realness. Verisimilitude. You have to look like a fucking woman. There it is. There it is right. We don't say it in public, but we all know it, and we all feel it. What is...
And this is always the admission. Everybody knows what they mean when they say feminine. Everyone knows what they mean when they say woman. Everyone knows. They strategically pretend like they don't know what these things mean. It's sort of the whole Sargon thing. I don't know what whiteness is. I don't know what it means to be white. What's the difference between a puddle and a lake? Everybody knows what these things are practically. Yet we have this strategic nihilism when it comes to actually debating these things. If I got into a conversation with ContraPoints, do you think that she would admit that she knew what a woman really was? She must know, or they must know, based on this very dialogue. I have a hard time telling whether I'm talking about the character or the person here, or even what pronoun to use if I was doing either one of those things. They must know this. They're admitting that they know this right now. But if I was to get into a conversation with this person, they would claim no knowledge of it. They would deny any knowledge of this concept for purposes of trying to deconstruct what we were talking about. But I don't know, they only go so far.
What does it even mean to look like a woman? Oh, don't give me that PC bullshit. I'm trying to have a real conversation here. We all know what it means. I don't know what it means. Women have a lot of different looks. There are bald women, bearded women, muscular women, wide-shouldered women. And what is society's opinion about those bald, bearded, wide-shouldered women? Is this just about you making me wear the dress again? The dress is the last of my concerns. I mean, where do I even start with this? You're wearing...
Oh, I just realized I had a super chat that I hadn't read. From Archie Fisher for £5. Can gays or trans people be traditionalists, or is this a contradiction in terms? I guess, insofar as these are principles, I don't see how you couldn't have same-sex attraction and still believe in traditionalism. I know that there are a lot of people on the right who suffer from same-sex attraction, or who experience same-sex attraction, if you prefer. But, I don't know, when you say trans people, I have to think that trans means that you're physically modifying a part of your body, with the idea that physically modifying a part of your body is going to somehow magically transform a metaphysical aspect of yourself. And I don't understand what traditionalist principle that could possibly be reconciled under. And for that reason, I don't see how you can believe in transition theory. And it is a theory. It's a theory. It's a metaphysical theory. It's a religious belief that surgically altering yourself is going to reassign you into a different metaphysical category. Or at least for some reason, and I know there's sort of this magical thinking, right? Like, well, we're not actually trying to metaphysically transform ourselves. We're trying to make it so that we can more easily socially integrate into society. And that's what we're modifying our bodies in order to be accepted by society. When does the left ever take this philosophy with anything else? Do you see this with people who are overweight? Does the left believe that you should modify your body to become thinner so that you can integrate in society better as a woman or as a masculine man? Well, of course not. They think that society should conform its norms to accept you. It's only in this one instance, transsexualism, where this idea is taken forward, and it's because they don't actually believe it. What's at the core of this problem is the idea that a physical transformation can facilitate a metaphysical one, and that, again, I don't know how you could embrace any of the classical Western metaphysical concepts and embrace that idea, because it's frankly ridiculous. Outside of just saying that I believe that this is a religious miracle, in the same way that I believe that the Eucharist is a religious miracle or a mystery. And even then, I'm not so sure you'd be able to make that part of any kind of traditional point of view, at least one that's anything in keeping with the Western perspective on things.
Combat boots. You cannot be wearing combat boots. Why not? A lot of cis women wear them. Cis women? Well, they're hopeless, aren't they? Fully clockable. So you want me to look like a woman without imitating cis women? Yes. Do not under any circumstances imitate cis women.
I have no idea where ContraPoints is going with this one.
I have no idea what they're doing. Well, where does your idea of womanhood even come from then? Das ewige Weibliche, the archetype of the eternal feminine. And where does that come from? Poets.
Yep. And this sort of gets... I mean, I'm going to keep on pointing this out, right? I mean, this person that we're on right now, the Natalie character, they're portrayed as being correct in this conversation. But on this one, the cat girl has it right. Eventually, if you take the image back and back and back and back and back, you get to the behavior of people who are actually born with two X chromosomes. That's what all of this aesthetic is actually trying to mold itself after. That's even the idea that I identify as a woman comes from your affiliation with people that at some original point had two X chromosomes. That's the only reason why you even know what the word woman means to begin with.
Teenage gay boys on Instagram, the only people with any coherent vision of contemporary womanhood. That's insanity. Is
Truth.
it? Tabby, look at my face. Look at this highlight. Does that
It's still hideous.
look like the product of insanity to you? I mean, yeah, kind of.
That cat girl's making more and more sense.
Who puts on that much makeup to drink tea at home? Good banter, well done. But trans women have to overdo it. You need to be so good at makeup that every cis woman you know comes to you for advice. You need to toss your hair and cross your legs.
I got a super chat from Dat Guy Do for $5 Australian. I would love to see an analysis of the straight... Pardon me, it's been a long day. I would love to see an analysis of the straight, white, cisgendered, male progressive and what keeps them on the left. I think that's an excellent idea. I proposed essentially 3 new series. The first one being just a continuing series like my Magic Word series concerning books and movies and video games that I think were particularly relevant to my intellectual development and why people who watch this channel might want to look into them or make them part of their own library or collection. Just something that might be able to help people out. The other two were anthropological examinations, the first of progressives, and I would definitely make male feminists part of that analysis. And then the second one, or I should say the third idea, but the second contained series would be an analysis of Islam, and both what I admire and don't admire about it. But yeah, I'll keep on going.
You need to smile, even at people who hate you. Eliminate every aggressive impulse. You must be a blossom floating along the surface of a stream. Your hands are not tools. They are ornaments at the ends of your arms. So you literally are what TERFs think trans women are. Literally a man's idea of a woman. Well...
That destroyed you, Contra. I think you're out for the count on that one.
Men have the power, men make the rules, and it's ultimately men who are the judges of womanhood, so you can't really blame me for having to deal with that situation.
No, you're not dealing with that situation. You're commending that situation. Again, it's like Stephen Colbert. He's destroying his own point here. What does it mean to be gender non-conforming if this is the standard, right? Oh, well, you have to have this kind of vision of yourself in order to be properly trans. Well, that means that there is a proper vision of what it means to be a woman. We're back at Plato, people, and people say, oh, well, this is always the tack that people... I bet if I brought things like this up, the need for forms, the need for ideas of abstraction and metaphysics and true things, to someone like, say, for instance, someone I respect, like Jolly Croc... not Jolly Croc. Well, I like Jolly Croc, but King Crocoduck, that's the guy. King Crocoduck. I brought this idea up to King Crocoduck. He'd be on like, oh, Plato, Aristotle, pseudoscience. We don't need metaphysics. This is all BS from Greek mythology. They're referencing it right here. They're trying to describe the absolute form of what it is to be female, but they can't do it. They can't admit to themselves that what they're doing is metaphysics. The only way any of this makes sense is as a religion or as a self-contradictory, meaningless nihilism that means absolutely nothing except a really, really facile attempt to lift up some political parties over the other. And I don't think that they think that what they're doing is a religion.
I can blame you for dealing with it by demanding we all conform to a bunch of ridiculous stereotypes. Not stereotypes, performances. You like philosophy so much, haven't you read Judith Butler? Gender is performance. We're all born naked, and the rest is literally drag. Woman...
Okay, I'll get into this again, but I feel like I'm going to be repeating myself. Some questions from the chat. From Jolly Crocodile. I love trans people. Think being feminine... I love how trans people think being feminine or masculine are entirely physical traits, like makeup and clothes. I mean, I guess, but they don't really believe that. That's the whole point. You could never get them to actually keep that principle and take it forward. They'll bring it up in certain conversations and then deny it elsewhere because they have to. So, just imagine rejecting the Western canon and the rich complexity of philosophy in order to spew puerile intersectional garbage to credulous teens and young adults. Well, yeah, that certainly is the case. And for ContraPoints, I feel like they do think that all of this is performance. And I think that's the most true thing about ContraPoints is that at the end of the day, I think in their heart of hearts, they think that they're mercenary entertainers and that's all they are. I think that what they are selling to their audience is this idea that behind the fakeness, there's something real. But if you actually drill down into these ideas, you'll see that there actually isn't anything real to be had. It's all just bullshit down and down and down and down and down as far as you go. I got a super chat for Linear Carp 1209 for $5. I'm confused. The non-cat is right-wingish straw man, but you're commenting as if you think Contra is actually arguing that view. No, actually, the cat girl, the non-cat... Well, okay, this is the thing. Contra's view, ContraPoints' view, is actually that of the person on the right. I don't think Contra is actually arguing from the cat girl's point of view. Or well, let's say that they were, right? What is the cat girl's point of view? The cat girl's point of view is that aesthetics are a physical assault on the authenticity of the person practicing aesthetics. I know Contra doesn't believe that, but you'd have to believe that if you were to believe the Tabby character in this skit.
Womanhood is not what you are, it's what you do. And trans women have to be virtuosas of womaning. So according to you, there's no difference between a trans woman and a drag queen. Now, you're misinterpreting what I'm saying. I don't mean performance in the sense of pretending to be something you're not. I mean performance in the sense of everything you do, the way you style yourself, your posture, the way you speak. An authentic performance is just a habitual performance, and nothing more than that. So...
Yeah, but that's not actually... Again, you're not going to stick with this definition. You're not going to... You can't. If you agree that it's all performance, then why are you paying a small... Like, basically the price of a car to get physical surgery on your body? It makes no sense.
Trans women just starting their transition are pretending to be women? I mean, isn't that kind of what it felt like?
Yeah, but... Oh! But... Yes, so here Tabby is making the points that deconstruct everything that transgenderism must believe. If gender is performative, then people who just started doing it aren't as womanly as people who've been doing it for a very long time. And women who perform femininity less than very feminine women are not themselves real women. But they'll never say that. They can't take this principle outside of this very, very specific conversation because it makes no sense when it's integrated with everything else. It's not coherent.
You transition the same way you get anywhere in life. You fake it till you make it. So according to you, a trans woman is just a full-time drag queen. That's what any woman is. What about gender non-conforming cis women? They're not doing womanhood in that way. Well, yeah. That's why those women are marginalized. They're going off the grid of what society recognizes as womanhood. You don't want to end up like that, do you? And hold on, are you saying that if a cis man dresses like a woman, talks like a woman, takes female hormones, is gendered female by other people, and spends his whole life pretending to be a trans woman, that he's literally as much of a woman as we are? Yep.
But wouldn't the Tabby character have to believe that in order to maintain what she just said?
That's absurd. But it's absurd because the example is absurd. No cis man would do that. It's like asking...
Except they might, right? Because we're trying to encourage all sorts of perverse usages of the word. The only way this makes sense is if there is an honor system in place to get people like me to not use their words in incorrect ways. Once traditionalists go along with this reconstruction of gender and internalize it and construct different words for themselves, their entire worldview falls apart. This whole idea of womanhood is parasitic on a concept of gender that is 60 years old. They can't build upon their own foundation because there's no foundation to build upon. This is why everything having to do with camp, everything having to do with gay culture, implicitly links back to hyper-masculine, hyper-femininity that was promoted in the 50s and 60s. It used to be that gay camp was highly focused on the 50s, 60s, 30s, 40s, the time when media existed but we still had strong issues of gender roles. They had this sort of camp going on back then, and it was, in the 60s and 70s, and people were like, okay, well, this is just the culture they have to work with. But now we've had 20, 30 years of queer culture being developed in cities. None of the camp references those periods because they can't build on it. The only way their lifestyle works if it is a parody of some well-known concept of masculinity and femininity that we have from some traditional culture. Once the traditional culture is removed as a default, everything just becomes a reference to itself with no firm ground to stand on. And that's what you're seeing here. Two self-contradictions. And they're not even contradicting each other. They're contradicting themselves in the very debate they're participating in. I guess this. I don't know what to say about ContraPoints because if I were in a conversation with someone who believed this, I think I could make it very clear. And I have been in conversations with leftists about this stuff, and they admit that it's self-contradictory, but yet it persists, and I don't know what they see as the end point.
Is a straight man gay if he only sleeps with men? Like, yeah, pretty much. See, this is a philosophy at its worst, pointless speculative fiction, and it's a distraction from what we're really talking about, which is you getting rid of those combat boots. I thought we were talking about philosophy. No, we're talking about shoes. Why do I always have to justify what I wear to you? You're apparently fine wearing designer dresses around your
By the way, ContraPoints, if I were talking to you directly, this obsession with leftist violence has nothing to do with combat boots you're wearing or the baseball you have as an aesthetic. It comes from literal threats of violence and carrying out violence against people who are on the right, and essentially winking the eye at people who do carry out violence against right-wingers under the guise that it's okay to hit Nazis. And of course, everyone who disagrees with you is a Nazi.
Communist friends. The left will abide a regal queer. Look, your performance theory doesn't explain why trans people exist in the first place. If gender is just a bunch of learned behaviors, then why did we reject our male upbringing and decide to live as women? What
Excellent point.
matters is that we identify as women. We can express that identity in different ways, but it's the identity, not the performance, that makes us women. But you can't be a woman.
But what is identity? Identity is just the word. Identity without any external referent is just a word. I could identify as a lesbian, change nothing about my behavior, change nothing about my appearance, change nothing about how I act or look or behave or believe or pray or practice my faith or pursue my career. I could just call myself that. I could identify as that. And if I did that, then by this logic, I would be that thing. And there would be the word would lack any kind of coherency. At some point, a word has to touch ground to actual physical reality or actual actions that people take or actual beliefs that they have in their head. Once those things disappear, once the words become totally autonomous, we're just... I hate using this term because atheists use this term all the time, totally incorrectly to dismiss things they don't understand, but we are literally in word salad at that stage. We're in a bunch of signifiers that don't actually point to anything outside of themselves, and that's what this identity concept means. It's an identity that has no corollary, or not corollary, no reference point in action, belief, or physicality. And I don't know what a word has outside of that. What word describes something that has no action, belief, or physicality associated with it? Or even metaphysicality. Heck, I'll go for things like spirituality and soul.
Without performing womanhood, without action, and without social recognition, the identity is meaningless. If womanhood is nothing to you but a private daydream, then you may as well do what those assholes say and identify as a helicopter, because unless you're living womanhood, the identity is literally that meaningless. That's very unfair to pre-transition trans people. Well, this isn't a Tumblr cuddle party, girl. I'm trying to talk about what's really true. I didn't say it was insensitive. I said it was unfair. Identifying
Not that it wasn't true.
as a woman before you transition is a psychological reality that implies a potential to live your inner truth. No one has ever sincerely identified as a helicopter. It's just a troll example.
Yeah, but inner truth, sincerely, authentic, these are all words that need to have further definitions. And if you go back and try to identify sincere, authentic, inner truth, you'll find them a hell of a lot harder to define than feminine, woman, or female. Leftists will always pretend that they don't know what female means or any of these words mean. Like, the boundary examples make the word meaningless. Well, then try to get a coherent example of authentic, inner truth, or any of these other concepts, the spiritual potential to be a woman. If you're going to have locker rooms have only authentic trans people inside of them, then I don't know what you're going to really get in the end. You're going to get a question over whether some person's beliefs are more authentic than others. And I think at the end of the day, that's what leftism really is. Leftism really is the belief that the emotions that certain groups have, specifically progressives, are more pure and better than the emotions that everyone else has. So perhaps an unauthentic trans woman who only wants to come into a women's locker room to scope out women's bodies is not authentically trans, even though I don't even know by leftist definitions what's wrong with that. Certainly, I have heard progressive gay men say that they love going into men's locker rooms so they can scope out all the men changing. So there shouldn't be anything wrong with that, but again, this is hidden behind words that they themselves would probably acknowledge have no meaning.
True, but even if they were sincere, there would still be no reality to it, because helicopter is not an actual social role. Whereas, you can become a teacher, a doctor, or a woman, but you have to work to get there, and ultimately...
Yeah, but women was not considered a social role until this movement decided to make it one very, very, very recently in our history. Anything else, like, is a dog a social role? Well, it didn't used to be. We could make it one. we could all decide that dog is a social role, and therefore transitioning into being a dog or a cat in this example would be something that you could actually do. Is helicopter so far off from that? I don't think so. It doesn't strike me as one. You could just as easily say, we don't know what it is to be a cat. No human has ever expressed what it is to authentically be internalized as a cat. That doesn't exist. As far as we know, cats are just meat machines. A helicopter is just the same way. We have a hypothetical concept of a helicopter, and that could be constructed as a social role if we decide to create it as one. So these troll examples illustrate the fundamental philosophical problem with what they're doing here.
Society has to let you. What do you mean? I can identify as a doctor and go around handing out diagnoses, but if no one recognizes me as a doctor, then I'm not really practicing medicine, am I? But that analogy means that our womanhood can be revoked at any moment. All it takes is being misgendered. It's scary, but isn't that the situation we're in?
So it's true. I guess this is pure Gnosticism, isn't it? So they worship a god called gender. It has no physical or behavioral references, and it's only true to the extent that people believe it is. That's what they're telling me.
Why did you get so angry when that TERF called you sir? Isn't it because in that situation, she robbed you of your womanhood? That's ridiculous. I am a woman. That's my reality. It doesn't depend on other people's opinions. I know you're a woman. I'm just saying that in that one moment, you effectively had your gender canceled.
Just like the native tribes who believe that you have your soul stolen from you as someone takes a photograph of you. Actually, if this were a religion, I could see this as a religion. That's fine. I understand how metaphysical concepts work. We could all decide that this is a religion. They have this religious idea of women, and they obtain this idea of womanhood by transitioning. And actually, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some tribe from New Guinea or whatever that actually has this property or this concept of transgenderism. But that would actually allow us to deal with it in the way that it should be dealt with, as something that we do not have to participate in if we do not want to. And I think that would open up actually, that would be a great way to resolve this culture war dialogue. And I don't wonder why they haven't explored this. I know why they haven't explored this. They haven't explored this because if they started treating transgenderism like a religion, then progressives would have to admit that they were in some sense doing the same thing as the people that they despise and consider lower than them are doing, and they would have to play by the same rules. And that's above all else what they wish to deny.
Another way of looking at it is gender is aesthetic, not rational. Either you're perceived as a woman or you aren't. There's no reasoning your way into it. But don't worry about that. I don't argue I'm a woman. I smash. I know you do, and it's a bad look. Is this about the shoes again? Yep. Here, put these on. Absolutely not. I'm not wearing those. Yes, you are, bitch. No? If you put these on, I'll, scratch you behind the ears later.
Chat, does this go anywhere? I think we're done with the philosophical conversation on this video. Okay, I'll let it play for a few minutes longer.
Now walk.
Okay. Guys, I can't.
That was the worst thing I've ever seen. Well, you're the one who made me do it. Look, don't stop around.
Okay, I'm ending this video if this doesn't get back to the philosophy really soon.
All the movement comes from your hips, and you want to put the weight on the balls of your feet.
Oh,
here, I'll
God,
show you.
No, please no. Okay, guys. That's the end of this. This is literally masturbation on YouTube. All ContraPoints videos do feel like they're self-aggrandizement. It's literally going to get to the point where a ContraPoints video just features them pleasuring themselves. I feel like that's in the work at some of these stages. That probably has happened at one point. And again, right, like this is their truth. I actually have to perhaps go in the next 13 minutes. I know this is a very, very short DistAns. We'll do a follow-up one perhaps on Monday because this is way too short. and I wanted to get through more videos. But let's just take more questions from the chat, and I'll call it a night. Oh God, this video was painful. I'm also have a bad setup too, as you might realize. I'm doing this on my travel machine, which is why the audio wasn't working. But, good Lord. This stuff is not difficult to debunk. It's not anyways real. I don't think there is a legitimate philosophical concern here. All it is performance art. Okay, so Linear Carp says Linear Carp 1209, $5 super chat. Thank you very much for your contribution. Before you get back to anything serious, would you consider making a vid deconstructing meme culture and its evolution? I'm a normie, sorry. I don't think that's bad, but I guess the question is the problem is, what's a meme, right? Where would you start that analysis? Because meme is a very, very broad category. And, do you start this with advertisements? Do you start this with images on billboards? Do we start this when it becomes a thing on the internet? I think that perhaps the 4chan culture, that would be worthy of criticism, but I still don't understand really what there is to criticize. Because the thing with 4chan is the second you take it seriously, you're kind of the joke. The only thing you really can do is ignore it as the trash that it is, and for the most part, it is trash. I mean, what is there really to say more about that? A-Hat says leftism is a cult. I don't think leftism is a cult, but ContraPoints certainly is trying to make themselves into a cult. ContraPoints, that literally, and they do this joke with Mao and the Golden Picture and Anita Sarkeesian, and they make a joke about their self-obsession. But their self-obsession is real. Their self-obsession is entirely real. That's what their channel is about. It's about themselves. It's about how what they do is so out there and edgy and intellectual, and how they're confronting all of these people. It's about self-aggrandizement. It's not about any external concept other than that. And I think insofar as we're talking about leftism being a religion, ContraPoints is a cult. That they're trying to facilitate that, and probably in a lot of ways, all of these YouTube channel type things have kind of cult-like elements to them. That's how you get to be an e-celeb, right? That's how you get to be... That's why things like Sargon versus Medicare are funny. It's not just because two reasonably well-spoken people on the internet are arguing. It's that two reasonably well-spoken people on the internet are arguing, and they have these huge attendant fan communities that go to war over who was in the right. Like, I don't care. I hope that Sargon's project of actually mobilizing political support behind the ideas that we talk about on YouTube works. Was he silly? Of course he was. Does that warrant the internet tearing itself apart over this issue? Absolutely not. And frankly, after the first half an hour of listening to that Medicare stream, I just got bored. He made some funny jokes, but where does it ultimately even go? Will ContraPoints talk to you again? Skydancer, no. I would eat my hat the day ContraPoints talks to me. Maybe it'll be a straw hat, but that individual is never going to talk to me again. If ContraPoints gets into debates with the right wing and continuously face plants like he did when he talked to me, I'm saying he, even though I usually say they, because when I talked to ContraPoints back then, they were a he. So I think it's perfectly, by my own standards, it's perfectly acceptable to use historically accurate pronouns, but they're not going to talk to me, because if they face plant like they did when they talked to me the first time, which has happened every time ContraPoints has gone up against a reasonably well prepared YouTube personality, then they will lose a reputation as being this rationality, this scion of rationality and the defense of progressivism. They'll be seen as more of a laughingstock, and that goes against their entire persona that they've built up for themselves. I think the only reason why I got the initial conversation with ContraPoints is because they saw that I was Catholic, and they associated Catholicism and all Christians with these stupid, stodgy people who had no wherewithal, who had no understanding of progressivism, and they weren't expecting somebody who actually knew what progressivism was and the talking points of progressivism, and who was prepared for those talking points. And they had no second-order arguments once those main talking points were answered. And that's probably the only reason why they debated me to begin with, is that they saw me as an easy mark. And once that easy mark status was gone, I don't think they had any incentive to interact with me ever again. Okay, what other movements suffer from such narcissism? Other than YouTube? Well, most media personalities suffer from narcissism. I mean, just myself, even doing YouTube, I don't think I'm a narcissistic person. You can feel free to disagree with me on that. But you feel a certain kind of egotism and insecurity grow as you do YouTube, as you become more invested in your image online. You start getting these pathological elements of your personality growing as you do it. And you constantly have to remind yourself that you're just a guy with opinions. You're just doing this as a hobby. You care about the ideas and not your own image. This has nothing to do with me. I know in this entire conversation, this DistAns has kind of been a little bit of a disaster, to be quite honest. We had sound issues to begin with. I have, I'm doing this on my laptop, not my ordinary computer. I've been drinking beer, and I hardly ever drink, and I'm kind of slurring some of my syllables. That just is what it is, and I have to accept that I'm going to have moments where my image is going to be less than sterling, and it's hard because I think YouTube does encourage narcissism. It absolutely does, and people have to come to terms with that. I hope people here will keep my ego in check. I do have some boomer elements about me. Why did the Catholic Church stop burning people? Well, yeah, in the light of current events, I've been asking myself that question a lot. I think we stopped burning people after Trent. Is that the case? I believe it is. I think we stopped burning people after Trent. Anyway, I'm not seeing any more. Yeah, I have about a few more minutes, so I don't have time for another video, so I'll have to sign off in a bit. But just to let you know what the projects are, I've been trying to dedicate some more time to writing, so hopefully I'll have some more essays, like the first one I posted on Via Obscura, The Men Who Killed Bin Laden. They tend to take me a really long time to write, but whatever. I mean, I'm trying to get faster at this stuff. I also have the two projects that I was talking about in videos. Hopefully we'll have a few videos concerning the books and literature that I like. And then also hopefully more live streams as well. And I really like to do the anthropological analysis of the left wingers and the anthropological analysis of Islam. I think especially on the right, people spend too much time. I don't want to say they spend too much time criticizing Islam because it's needed. Islam is a heretical religion that in many ways is not very human and not very spiritual. But at the same time, it's got elements of it that we have lost in the West. And insofar as we can learn from things like Confucianism and Buddhism and the ancient Greeks and Judaism, I don't see why we can't learn from Islam. In many ways, I find it a little bit more refreshing when you compare it to Buddhism. But that's neither here nor there. I certainly will go over it in my series whenever I get around to it. Pseudo-Analyst says, do you still watch Dr. Steve Turley's vids? If so, what is your thought on his white pills? On his white pills, pardon me. Dr. Steve Turley is a great guy. He ends every one of his videos with 3 exclamation points. I've checked every single time I see one of his videos. I go, does this video end with 3 exclamation marks? And at the point where you're ending every one of your titles with 3 exclamation marks, does it contain any meaning anymore? I don't know. I like Dr. Steve Turley. Culturally, he kind of grates on me, I'm not going to lie. Because as someone who grew up in a progressive area, I'm constitutionally allergic to this evangelical attitude of we're always winning, we're always on the upside, we're on the winning side of history, guys, we just got to push harder, everything is great. God, I coming from the Bush administration, I felt like I cut my teeth on evangelicals I cut my teeth as an atheist debating evangelicals who were all the while convincing themselves that they were winning a culture war that everyone could see that they were losing except themselves. And I really don't... Hey, if we're going to lose the culture war, I'm going to do so with both eyes open. I don't want this message that everything is going to be delivered to our laps all bundled up in a ribbon. That's just... I don't know. I guess I understand why the people like it. I respect the man. I think he's a good guy. I like his message. But he's just not my style. He's not my style. And it has to do more with culture and upbringing and how I was raised and where I was raised than it probably has to do with his actual message or the actual veracity of his claims. Dave, do you consider Orthodox heretical like immersion does? I mean, there's heresy and there's heresy. I don't know. I consider the Orthodox to be technically in heresy, but not in any meaningful sense. It's, at this stage, more a conversation on politics and less one actually on spirituality. Which Styx videos did you have lined up? I had the one lined up where he talks about the Catholic abuse crisis. And maybe when I come back on Monday and do the second part, maybe I'll call it DistAns 5.1 or something. I'll have a little bit more time. And maybe at that point I'll go over not only Styx's video on the abuse crisis, but also the video that Argent Templar did. I should basically just have Argent Templar on a live stream one of these times. I think one of the first videos on my channel is a conversation with Argent Templar. But, or does he still go by Argent Templar, or is it just Argent now? Thoughts on E. Michael Jones? I've said this many times before. We probably agree on a lot. I think that his aesthetic is a little bit... I don't know. I feel like he takes every conversation and turns it around onto one of three topics. I might even agree with those topics, but I don't know. I'm always more partial to people like Leah Labresco, who comes from a similar culture that I do, who has a similar intellectual background, who's able to be a little bit more flexible, to talk on a variety of topics. This could be just elitism and snobbery on my end, but at any rate, it is something that I notice in myself. At any rate, we'll take a few more questions since I'm running out of time. If there's any more super chats, I'll just check to see if there's any super chats that I have missed. Just checking here. I think I got all of them. Okay, well, I have a bunch of them where people say, no sound, you boomer, blah, 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 I'm a boomer. Yes, indeed, I had the channel on OBS set to the wrong microphone to pick up the audio. So you got 5 minutes of silence. But again, thank you for the super chats, Björk Eriksson and Spec7Re82. We all have our boomer moments, certainly, and I am no exception to that, even though I am technically an older millennial. Okay, and Pseudo Analyst says, fixed already, boomer, but thanks for the $2. So, yeah, again, the lag makes it very hard to debug these things, especially when OBS is telling you weird things. Okay, so I think that's all of the questions. I'll check the chat one more time. Have you read or heard anything about Timothy Gordon's book, Catholic Republic? I haven't. I'll have to look into that one. It is a little bit difficult to keep up with all of the people in the Catholic sphere, or the Catholic sphere, if you'd rather. There seem to be a lot of voices, and they're all saying different things. Again, like I said, I think that there is a division being formed up around the Pope Francis Catholics and around the people who are more conservative. I think it was a split that was eventually going to have to come to head, and I think that this, insofar as that all wars are about striking in a time and place of your choosing, I feel very, very comfortable striking in this time and place. We have exposed the people affiliated with Francis as the frauds that they always were. It's now time to create a unified counter movement against them, to reform the church in an orthodox direction and to make sure that this does not happen again. And, but Catholicosphere, I don't mean the church, I mean the Catholics who participate in conversations politically online or in print. But that's neither here nor there. Why America will fail without Rome. Well, maybe. I used to believe just that. I used to believe that the Catholic Church could be the salvation of America. At this point, I think that I still believe, obviously, I believe that the Catholic Church could be the savior of our civilization. But I think that the Catholic Church's problems are too imminent to really address America's immediate problems. I think that we need to take, insofar as America is savable, I think we need to take these things on as separate projects. And we would need to address the church's problems first, because the church isn't going to be able to do missionary work without cleaning up what's going on in it right now. Everyone can see this. It's so obvious. I don't know why anyone bothers even disputing this. Can you explain distributism and Catholic economic policies? This has been the most requested thing I've ever had. Maybe I'll do it, guys, but like I said, I'm an economic skeptic. These are it's only a theory. But I mean it, right? I mean, I only believe economics that are put into effect and are actually tried in experiment. And we've never had a chance to experiment with this stuff. In order for distributism to actually be evaluated in the modern context, we'd have to have the ability to experiment with a small county-sized distributist community. This could only go on under some renewal of federalism or some dispensation from some larger institution that actually exists in this world, and then we'd be actually able to see how these things behave in the real world. Hey, I could make the video. Like, I could go make a 2-hour video about what distributism... Oh, pardon me. I made the same mistake that I said distributism. I could make a 2-hour video about what distributism says, in theory, about how economics should be organized. But that is meaningless for all practical considerations outside of functioning distributist communities that exist on a larger scale level, or actual policies that are more distributist in their formulation that we could test by implementation. I think rationalism, I think abstract theory is very good for a variety of things. But when it comes to politics, when it comes to economics, I am a pure pragmatist. I am a pure experimentalist. We have got to get actual small-scale examples of these things running before we can figure out what's wrong with them. Reality is just too complicated to do anything but that. But anyway, I don't think there's any more serious questions. Well, I guess there's one question that's a follow-up. Would the Amish communities be considered distributist? Technically not. I'm sure that distributist communities would have a lot of ideas in common with the Amish. I think one thing that the Amish do have an idea of is that we have to, at some point, look at technology and go, we're not going to do that. We're not going to make that. If everything we can make, we do make, the human race is done for. And it's probably not going to be replaced with some super awesome godlike AI that's benevolent. It's probably going to be replaced by some super basic, pathologically destructive and consumptive organism, a virus, a computer virus, a nanomite, something that has no resemblance to anything that we would consider to be intelligent or artistic or beautiful. At some stage, humanity has to learn the ability to say, we can make it, but we're not going to make it. We can use it, but we're not going to use it. And insofar as we can learn any wisdom from the Amish, that's probably it. But with that, I apologize for the very short and unorganized DistAns this time, guys. But at any rate, I will bid you guys a good night, and I will see you on Monday to do the second part of this DistAns series. And, well, save your questions till then. Have a wonderful evening.